Well, a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dan. Yes, my name is Michael Stoppard, and it is my very great pleasure, as in previous years, to chair the Global Gas Plenary here on the midday of CERAWeek. It's over 20 years now since I made a personal career decision not only to get into the energy business, but very specifically, I wanted to focus on the natural gas industry. And I must say, I don't regret that decision at all. Gas issues around the world, they continue to intrigue us, to surprise us indeed. I think to offer huge uncertainties, and in some cases also to generate controversy. Will natural gas catch up and surpass its rival energy forms of oil and coal in the global energy system? What we sometimes refer to as the golden age of gas. But I also think an emerging theme, one we're very aware of, is within this narrative of growth, where is the value to be found for participants? And as we heard in the opening discussion, how will different continents and different countries fashion their energy policies as we look at this cross-fuel competition? How will the LNG industry evolve, particularly as North American shale and ultra-deep water discoveries fit into what seems to be a new map of global gas? These are some of the questions that we will address this morning on this panel, and indeed throughout the day in greater detail in the follow-up presentations and breakout sessions and meetings that we have today. So let me introduce the speakers for this morning. And first of all, on my far left, on your right, we welcome Chris Finlayson, the Chief Executive of BG Group. In the middle, Sam Laidlaw, Chief Executive of Centrica. And here on my direct left, Rob Franklin, President of ExxonMobil, ExxonMobil Gas and Power Marketing. I have asked our speakers today to take complementary but different angles on the gas business. Rob will set the scene for us with a global perspective on the gas business, something that ExxonMobil is, of course, ideally positioned to give us a global view on the market. Sam will devote part of his comments, I believe, particularly focusing more on the energy policy situation in Europe, and will also share with us some developments at the consumer customer side of the business. And I've then asked Chris to focus specifically on developments in the exciting LNG business. So each speaker will speak for something between 8 or 10 minutes, and that will leave us plenty of time for some more informal dialogue and questions. As I think you probably know by now, we have question cards and we have people collecting, so do think about your questions as we go along, and I'll be collecting and fielding those. And when we've heard from our speakers, we'll take some of those questions. So first up is Rob. Rob has held a variety of positions in ExxonMobil and formerly Mobil Corporation. I looked through your resume, and there's a very strong emphasis on gas through much of your career. And so I'd like to invite you to kick off proceedings, Rob. Please welcome Rob.
Well, thank you, Michael, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Michael indicated, since I'm the first panelist to speak today, I would like to start by giving you a high level, with only 2 charts, a high level overview of the global gas market, what it looks like today, and what we at ExxonMobil expect or anticipate it to look like over the next few years. As you can see from this slide, demand for natural gas is increasing across all sectors. The panel on the left shows global energy demand broken down by type. Gas has the most absolute growth, with global demand projected to rise by about 65% from 2010 to 2040. and it is expected to overtake coal as the second largest energy source, behind only oil, by 2025. The right panel splits the same gas demand by sector. Power generation has the largest absolute growth, with demand growing by about 80%. Now, in OECD countries, this growth in power gen is driven by gas replacing coal as the cost of CO2 emissions increases. In non-OECD countries, the increase stems from some countries having abundant local supplies, while others are wanting to import gas to increase diversity of supply and provide a cleaner fuel source. Industrial has the second largest absolute growth, driven principally by increasing gas penetration in non-OECD countries. So now let's look more closely at specific regions. In this slide, you can see how natural gas demand is changing through 2040 in the three major consuming regions: North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. And yes, these are all on the same scale. In North America, we expect demand to grow at about 1% per year on average, flattening towards 2040 as the region makes further gains in energy efficiency. As you can see, unconventional gas production will continue to grow substantially in this period and is expected to satisfy about 85% of demand by 2040. I should note that there is even more production in North America than the significant growth displayed. This chart just reflects production, meeting anticipated domestic needs. There are certainly plentiful gas resources to support both the growing domestic use of natural gas as well as exports. In Europe, we expect demand to be relatively flat. Local gas production continues to decline, and imports will rise from about 45% today to over 60% by 2025, and this will require more pipeline supply from Russia and from the Caspian, as well as LNG imports. Clearly, it's Asia-Pacific that is the big growth story. Demand nearly doubles by 2025 and continues to grow through 2040. Domestic production climbs, but at a slower pace than demand, and as a result, Asia-Pacific will see a growing reliance on gas imports, especially LNG, which meets about 40% of the region's demand in 2040. So that's the data. That's ExxonMobil's projections of the future, but what does it mean and what are the issues? Well, let's start with North America, which has a pretty good story to tell. As you all know, unconventional resources have been a game changer, and that change is in its early stage. In only a few short years, the North American recoverable resource base has more than doubled. This bounty has led to a resurgence in a number of industries, including chemicals, steel, auto manufacturing, and clearly Siemens. We are already seeing significant economic benefits through new investments, cheaper energy bills, and more jobs. This abundance also explains why North America is expected to shift from a net importer to a net exporter by around 2020, as shale production outpaces domestic demand. But in order to make this transition, governments will need to help provide the framework for that success. And frankly, more work needs to be done on that front. Let us take US LNG exports as an example. Government decision-making has been in a state of near paralysis when it comes to approving LNG export applications. A recent study by ICF International shows that US LNG exports will translate into billions of dollars in annual US GDP growth, hundreds of thousands of direct and indirect jobs, and billions more in tax revenue at federal, state, and local levels. And yet, to date, the Department of Energy has approved only 6 LNG projects to export to non-free trade agreement countries. Several more projects are currently awaiting DOE review, some of which have been waiting in a queue for consideration for around 2 years. This current review process has generated unreasonable delays and uncertainties and has made it difficult to make the major investment decisions necessary to develop LNG export projects. And it has also put the US at a disadvantage relative to its competitors in the world. What an interesting place to be in light of America's historic leadership in the area of free trade. But the free market can only work if the government actually enables growth and investment through smart and efficient policy actions. And on that note, let me turn to Europe, whose current outlook is essentially a no-growth scenario. And we at ExxonMobil certainly do not like seeing such a poor outlook for gas as the largest non-governmental marketer in Europe. We believe that natural gas is a key component to building an internationally competitive and environmentally sound European economy. Unfortunately, Europe's current 2020 energy and climate policies are not meeting its own objectives of encouraging lower emitting energy production while supporting economic competitiveness. The many targets and subsidies in those policies have distorted energy markets and led to serious negative economic impacts across Europe. It's ironic that despite billions of dollars spent on renewable subsidies, there has been a rise in coal consumption across Europe and a dramatic drop in gas use in power. In fact, according to estimates from IHS-CERA themselves, between 2010 and 2013, there was a near 30% decline in gas use in power generation across Europe. Over the same period, UK government data shows the share of gas in electricity generation declined from 48% to 27%, a true dash from gas. Additionally, data shows that greenhouse gas emissions actually increased in both the UK and Germany, largely as a result of gas-to-coal switching in power generation. Other consequences have included an increase in consumer electricity prices and a lack of investment in the energy sector. Now, hopefully recognizing this, the European Commission has a new proposed climate and energy policy for 2030 that strives for more competitive and integrated energy markets. However, the proposed continued subsidies for renewable energy, coupled with a binding renewables target overlapping a greenhouse gas emissions target, has the potential to undermine efforts to better balance competitiveness, energy security, and sustainability in Europe. Indeed, key energy officials within the EU rightfully warn of the risks of deindustrialization in the EU if it does not contain its energy costs. We at ExxonMobil do believe that a strong, internationally competitive economy supported by a reliable and cleaner energy supply is achievable for Europe. However, it is imperative that all energy sources be able to compete on equal terms, including even natural gas. But finally, to end on a high note, how about the great Asia-Pacific story? Globally, we expect LNG demand to triple, growing from around 215 million tons in 2010 to around 650 MTA by 2040. And of this demand, we anticipate more than 75% will go to Asia-Pacific countries. This growth will require massive additional new LNG supplies. Currently, there are around 80 MTA of new LNG capacity that is either under construction or has at least taken a final investment decision. But growing global demand will necessitate the need for even more capacity from future projects, around 55 MTA by 2020 and fully 250 MTA by 2030. This demand represents significant business opportunities for many gas producers around the world. Importing countries in Asia-Pacific are seeking diversity in their portfolios, believing that these new supplies will result in more attractive terms for their respective nations. As a result, different contract arrangements, such as hub indexation, tolling agreements, the increased use of non-source-specific portfolio sales, and more short-term sales are likely to be tested over the next few years by marketers eager for Asia-Pacific's business. It is important for Asia-Pacific consumers to appreciate, however, that LNG supply will remain a capital-intensive business. LNG facilities are complex to build and complex to operate. And they're expensive, very expensive. These costs continue to rise. For instance, the ATMTA I referenced earlier, that's post-FID right now, on average, the projects in that ATMTA are going to cost $20 billion each. And the costs continue to rise. If we compare that with those projects sanctioned between 2001 and 2010, that is a four-fold increase. And while LNG developers are looking at new ways to manage these costs, long-term commitments are still needed to create a durable, financeable value chain. And thus it's important that the governments of these importing countries support a stable credit structure and market-based pricing. As we move forward globally, it's important that government and industry work together to ensure our energy supplies and markets continue to thrive. The keys to ensuring our mutual success are alignment on free market solutions, coupled with long-term planning and innovation. So thanks for the opportunity to discuss this with you, and I look forward to the questions.